This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension for lunch, we were in Standing Finance Committee. Standing Finance Committee resumes.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Minister, it is proposed rather that this head be completed today, so we have to move swiftly, and certainly wanted to give everyone the opportunity to raise their concerns. I will start the ball rolling pretty quickly. Under Program 510, Subprogram 514, Bridge Construction and Maintenance Services. We see the amount there for this estimates of 2.16 million. Madam Chair, before your dispensation, work was started. We had an event at Pike Corner in St. Lucie, 2 consecutive years, terrible floods, 2019, 2020. Work was started on the bridge at Pike Corner, not just because of the floods, but when I drew to the attention of the Honourable Minister then, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, that the road had started to be separated, the bridge walls had started to be separated from the main road, and it was thought that we needed to correct this quickly. Having been reassigned from the ministry, Honourable Minister, no further work has been continued. Having also met in a town hall meeting on July 31st, 2021 with residents, and it was indicated then that work would recommence in January of 2022. January 2022 has passed. January 2023 has passed. Still nothing has been done as yet. And we are almost in the wet season, or we are approaching another wet season. I want you, Minister, to be able to give some comfort to the residents of Pike Corner and Cove Bay and Little Bay and Well Road and those areas that this bridge, because you have some money here, you have 2.1 million, this bridge, which was left lagging ever since I left the ministry, that this bridge will be completed in this financial year to bring ease to these residents whenever there is heavy rainfall. This is something that this is dear to me because this is the area I was born and grew up in. This is where I go to service the church every single Sunday. So if the rain falls, I have to get a boat to get across the road, and the members perhaps may not be able to come, and particularly so as the Member of Parliament now, there's a lot on my shoulder. Honourable Minister, I give way to you to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are perfectly correct. Work had been stalled on this bridge for quite some time. I'm going to ask Mr. Tudor to give you the details in terms of the progress of the works there. I know that they had sent a team down to be able to do some clearing of the area because it was one of the bridges in our meetings that we recognized had not been revisited. I think sometimes what happens is, and I would have spoken to it in my opening, there are a number of bridges that were identified back in the late 1980s that required total reconstruction and full rehabilitation. And in many cases, a lot of the work had not been followed up on in relation to those bridges. As a consequence, Pike Corner obviously is one of the ones that has fallen into disrepair as well. So I know that some design work had to be done. I'm sure that Mr. Tudor will be able to speak further to where we are now. But just to give you the reassurance, and to others in whose constituencies there are similar bridges, while we're going to do some works under the Scotland District Programme, we also intend in-house as well to look at the bridges that the ministry will also have to carry out works on. You will see in the estimates, in addition to an allocation for Pike Corner and Bawden's Bridge, both of which I believe they're using some precast structures to be able to carry out the works a lot faster, that we're also allocating some funds for Dodds Bridge as well. And from the survey that was done back in 1985, there are a number of other bridges that unfortunately are no longer in use, but we recognize that we have to have an aggressive program to perhaps use the precast structures to be able to help bring those back into operation. So just to say that it's a combination of approaches, both in terms of the funds under the Complant project, but also from internal ministry being able to complete what we've started. And in this case, obviously being able to complete the Pike Corner Bridge and also be able to do Bawden's and Dodds as well in this financial year. I think you are well aware that I know when I came to the ministry, Mr. Tudor indicated to me that a bridge costs to repair at least about $5 million, sorry. And I think the reality here is that given the deterioration over the years of all of the bridges across the country, it is a huge investment that we would have to make in terms of repairing all of them. And so again, just like with the roads, there has to be a phased approach that the ministry has to take to doing those repairs. But I'll ask Mr. Tudor, who's obviously working directly on that project, to just weigh in to give you a further update on Pike Corner.
Yes, good afternoon, honourable members. With respect to Pike Corner Bridge, I know it has been a long time that we've delayed the start back of that project, but you'll be pleased to note that as of next week, a temporary bypass road will be built at Pike Corner. We have a one bridge that was done about a year or two ago, so we're going to divert traffic onto that bridge while we demolish the existing bridge that is there and replace it. So as of next week, because we have the LPOs in hand now to restart that project. So as of next week, you will see some serious activity there with the redoing or shifting the road from its current location across the bridge that was not too long ago constructed. The existing bridge will be demolished and be replaced with a bigger, stronger bridge. So that work will start as of next week. I'm not saying that because I'm meeting you today, but but our work will actually start next week.
I will hold you to that, sir. Remember,
No problem.
I pass there every week.
No problem, sir.
Or even more often. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honourable member for St. Michael West.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the ministry. Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. First and foremost, I would like to recognize, Honourable Minister, the behemoth of a ministry that you lead, and I would like to recognize your effective leadership in doing so. The management, upgrading, and maintenance of our country's infrastructure is very critical to our mission of becoming world class, as the Prime Minister has so said. And our road and water infrastructure is key to supporting our goal, as stated by the Honourable Prime Minister and the Minister of Housing, of constructing 10,000 houses in 5 years. And Honourable Minister, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of supporting our capital works projects, it is of equal importance. More so because our citizens love to hear that, yes, we have all these lovely hotels going up. But what of infrastructure? And as the Prime Minister has said before, we're very good at building, but poor at maintenance. So the issues of drainage, water resources, road infrastructure, and lighting, as my colleague from the city of Bridgetown mentioned earlier, is of tantamount interest to the MPs of the urban area specifically. But Honourable Minister, I'd like to say to you that on a personal note, I want to thank you and the Permanent Secretary for the ongoing roadworks on the Rihanna Drive area. And, it can't be stick all the time. I gotta give thanks and praise too. So I'm thankful for that. And what is the #1 tourist attraction in Barbados? And, you made me look good. So for my first question, most of you know well would have accompanied the St. Michael MPs on the bus tour before St. Michael speaks. And I would have pointed out an area to the Prime Minister and to the team in Bridge Gap Goodland area, where there's extreme flooding. When, as you mentioned earlier, Honourable Minister, when you have like 5-10 minutes of extreme downpour. This flooding is serious, so much so that it's like rapids that washes away vehicles. And at that time, the Prime Minister had tasked the drainage unit of coming up with a solution to the issue. Now, I don't want this to get swept under the rug, because I wouldn't want for the rainy season to come out again. And then we got some unfortunate headline, somebody car get washed away and some boy dead. So we really need to keep this issue in the forefront. So my first question to you is, what is the status of this solution that drainage is supposed to be coming up with?
I want to thank you, first of all, for thanking the ministry, not so much myself alone, but thanking the ministry for the completion of Rihanna Drive. It is an area that we have, I think, all shared in a recognition that it is an important part of our history right now, and certainly an important part of as a tourism destination for a number of the tourists on island, and we felt that the works needed to be progressed. I'm sorry that it took longer than it ought to have, but I am well aware that the road works have been completed, and grateful to the team for pushing to ensure that that was done. As it relates to your comments regarding drainage, I too was on the tour, as was Parlsec and the rest of the team. I'm going to ask, and I know that the technical team has made a comprehensive list of each of the tours that we do with the MPs, so that they can be follow-up and so that they can be prioritization. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bowen to just comment in relation to the efforts being made by drainage in relation to the Bridge Gap area.
Jason Boyne, Deputy Chief Technical Officer. Honourable members, that area, the Bridge Gap area, we are very much aware, and yes, we were tasked with coming up with a solution for the Bridge Gap area. We must say that the area is, we have to look at not just simply that drain in particular, you have to look at the entire watershed area. When I say watershed, I mean all of the water and an area where when rain falls, all the runoff that would go towards that particular drain At present, more water goes to that drain than it can handle, particularly relative to what would be an acceptable design storm. So at this point, we are carefully assessing that watershed. We must must acknowledge that the watershed has significant, what we would call impervious layers, areas such as rooftops. All these things which should really have been site contained on properties and so forth. All of the rainfall runoff is running into the roads, and these lead towards this drain. So the drain is at present not able to accommodate all of the runoff that goes to it. So what we are looking at, as I said, to assess that runoff and then quantify and design a drain that can accommodate the water. However, we have to also look at other areas we have to look at other methods and other methodologies to capture this water as well, some of this water upstream, and we are looking for avenues to capture water to achieve this, because the design of the drain, there's not enough space along that area for that drain to be widened. It's not an easy task. Persons' homes are almost up against the walls of the drain, so we have to also look at other measures to reduce the flow into that drain. That's it.
Thank you. All right, for my second question, this pertains to depots now. In spite of their best intentions, I find that the depots are severely under-resourced. I have a few projects in the constituency that have stalled. They got started, but they've stalled because of what I'm told is a lack of materials. So there's a particular project in Greenwich Road, Prescott Bottom, where they were building up a curb. First they trenched it and left the trench open for a little while. Then they finally filled it because there was a car that ran off the road and ended up in the trench. But when it got filled out and time to build up the curb, only to be told that they're in the wood. So I find that too many times these projects, these small projects, get started and it is a real humbug to the residents, because when you add them all together, especially in the dense urban areas with little narrow roads, it really does add to the frustration of residents. So I would like to find out from the ministry, what is the plan to really outfit these depots so that they're more effective on a day-to-day basis in responding to a lot of the issues that the urban MPs face on a day-to-day basis?
Thank you, Member. I think it's not just an urban issue. I think this is a whole of country challenge that I think all MPs will share in the concern that you have expressed. I have a view, and this is a personal view, but one that I've tried to extend to the ministry in the last year, which is that we have tried to decentralize the services of the depots to perhaps make it easier to respond to issues in particular communities. What, however, has been one of the biggest challenges, let me just say in principle that makes sense, to be able to have a depot available to you readily to be able to meet the needs of the residents and communities. But there is another reality, which is that the depots have to obviously have access to resources. Each depot is not operating currently with the same types of infrastructure, and therefore there is an inequality that exists with the depots. In a perfect situation, each depot would have the same resources in terms of infrastructure and be able to execute in a particular area. We also have a situation where, for instance, the Scotland district, they deal with different issues in terms of the gabions. They deal with, obviously, other challenges in terms of the slippage of the roads. And obviously, in your area, Honourable Member, and certainly in mine, there are the usual challenges in terms of the issues of clearing of the roadways, the flooding issues, and the like that we tend to complain more about, filling of the potholes, those types of things. I do feel that it requires, at this point, as we are trying to modernize MTW, a different approach to the rationalization of the depots. First of all, looking at what the infrastructure is that we currently have, whether it is obviously meeting the purpose of the particular areas, and then trying to work with the Ministry of Finance in particular, and I'll ask the PS to speak to it as well, but to look at ensuring that we are able to get the resources that are needed for that particular depot. Now, even in getting the resources to the depot, one of the other challenges is that the ministry over the years has not continued a lot of the training that is necessary to ensure that not only are problems identified, but that there's a system for treating to those problems. So we don't just need problems to be identified, we need to be able to have a system for addressing them. And ticking them off on the list. We are also dealing with a situation where a lot of the information that comes from the depots is also paper-based, and therefore we are in the process of making the transition through technology to be able to allow central ministry to look clearly across all of the depots and to see what works have been completed and what works are in progress. Now, what I'm speaking of is a transformation in the way that business has been traditionally been done at the ministry. And it therefore is going to take some retraining and retooling of the existing staff. It is going to take a rationalization of the services that are offered by the depots. It is going to take a rethink of whether each depot should offer the same services or whether in the rationalization we look at fitting specific depots to do specific things given all of the issues of transportation and those types of things. But it also, I think more importantly, is forcing us to look at our human resource capacity. Whether we are fit for purpose, do we have the right technical people in place? Do we have enough technical people in place? And I know the PS can speak to this issue because we've had some deficits in terms of the ability of the certain depots to be able to respond adequately to the needs of a community. And I can give you the assurance that it is something we are actively working on, and it is a work in progress. But I think you have to appreciate that this is how business has been done for many, 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 many years. And it has not necessarily been the best way to do things. And if we are deconstructing the depots, then we have to do a lot of changes in terms of how the day-to-day operations are actually being managed. I will also indicate to you, member, that one of my challenges as well is that currently all roads tends to lead to the Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Mr. Tudor, who you will hear me often call upon. And that has been a concern I've expressed at several meetings, and certainly in terms of our justification to have additional persons to assist him, because whether it's bridges, whether it's roads, whether it's short roads, cart roads, he is the person who we go to in terms of giving a position on a number of these challenges that we're facing. And I do feel that we now need to move to a point where we have a head of depots who can pretty much monitor through the technology what is happening at the depots, but also through the assistance of the Chief Technical Officer, be in a position to set standards across the depots so that a number of the concerns certainly that you have are addressed. I'll just share with you, when we were in St. Peter Speaks recently, we had a situation where it was brought to the attention of the meeting that some boulders had been placed in an area to block a road. The Honourable Senior Minister had shared a photo of the way in which those boulders had been placed. And the truth of the matter, and I will use Bajan terms, it looked like the boulders just get thrown down on the ground. And I say that because it was not done with any thought as to how pedestrians would traverse. I appreciate that people wanted to get the job done, and they were probably given a directive to close off the road. But it spoke to a deeper issue of the standards that are necessary across our depots, that everybody, in a sense, there's a certain line of march, that we know that there's a particular way to do things, and that we try not to deviate from it. Equally, I can say that we have had that situation corrected, and so pedestrians are now able to traverse the area. But it took a situation like that being brought to our attention to have the insistence that there be more attention paid to the way in which we do things. Similarly, when the honourable member earlier spoke about pothole patching, again, there has to be a standard to which the ministry holds itself and to which the public is comfortable holding the officers as well. And I think once we can establish those standards, once we can retrain and retool the staff within the ministry, or in some cases, outsource it so that we are able to get a better quality of work, I think that we can improve the delivery of service across the depots of the country. So I'll ask the PS just to speak to the issue of the finances and obviously sometimes what the challenges are in relation to ensuring that each of the depots have the adequate amount of resources available to them.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, and also thank you, Honourable Member. The Deputy Prime Minister, I think it's come on now. Deputy Prime Minister has given a most comprehensive response, but just to quickly say, we are looking now at the non-statutory expenditure, which is just over $126 million. But if you look at the global amount for the ministry this year, the $153 million, $70 million of that goes towards road network services. And those road network, the depots are at the heart of those road network services. So therefore, as Deputy Prime Minister said, we must have a rationalization of the depots. Fortunately, we are coming to the end of the IDB road connectivity project, and one of the components of that was, two of the components. One was institutional strengthening. That report is in, and we are also working with a change management specialist. We've had 2 sessions so far, and as soon as these estimates are finished, hopefully from next week, we will be reconvening. And there's also a capacity building, because we need to look at the better deployment of our personnel. Yes, the financial resources are tight from time to time, but we still have to make the best use of the personnel available to us. And we must also have a critical look to determine, do we still need to have the structure of 13 depots that probably existed back in the 80s or back in the 90s? So we speak very, very highly and importantly, of fit for purpose. We need to restructure the depot system. And we must also bear in mind that the depots during the hurricane season, and God forbid in the event of any other disaster, a lot of the first responders, while they will come from headquarters, the depots are also responsible, have significant responsibility to undertake work. So if the depots are not functioning at maximum efficiency, or at least 90 to 95%, we will not get the best benefit for the money that we are spending here. So the bottom line is that we have recognized it. We have started to address it. Fortunately, we are seeing a lot more of our technical staff coming through the associate degree program, formerly the OTD program at the community college. I must add this though, and this is a bit frustrating, that it takes a very long time to have persons replace when some of our senior artisans go off and when our technicians go off. And believe me, were it not for the quality of the majority of the persons that we have and the attitudes that they have, we would be worse off than we are right now. And the sooner we can have the Ministry of the Public Service approve some of these areas, this will help us significantly. Like, for example, I can speak to 15 technicians too that we need at this time. These are the persons with the technical ability who we would need to, the chair spoke earlier of the bridge. You can only replace a bridge if you have bridge drawings, but you must also have somebody on the ground who can read the drawing and direct the artisan in terms of what to build. So you are seeing that we are doing a lot more outsourcing now because we do not have the level of technical staff. Not that the ones that we have don't have the ability, but the numbers are so few, we can't spread them any thinner than they currently are. So, Honourable Member, in closing, yes, we recognize the importance of the depots, as the DPM said, not only to the urban areas, but to the other areas as well. But the urban areas, yes, because of the density of the population and the greater significance of the road network. But we are addressing it, and I would hope that by this time next year, we would have seen a significant improvement in the manner in which the depots function. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now, for my third comment question. Honourable Minister, I applaud the efforts of the ministry in executing the road rehabilitation project in the Scotland district and on the East Coast. And I'm hopeful that that can unleash economic development, like what happened when the ABC Highway was constructed. Those residents have been ignored for too long, and they need it down there. We need it as a country. But you know, there's a saying, I think in the US, that nothing is bigger than Texas. So I think that in Barbados, nothing is bigger than St. Michael. And all of the issues in St. Michael are tenfold. And as the Honourable Prime Minister said, the issues that St. Michael face tend to be more unique, especially because of the rise in deviancy and the issues that we have with crime and the murders, which my colleague from the City of Bridgetown tackles on a daily basis. So with his efforts and the efforts of the Ministry of Housing to provide good housing for people, for the Ministry of Youth in terms of getting more playing fields lit, I think that your ministry holds of equal importance. The keeping the drainage clear, the drains clear, the potholes fixed, all those things add to frustration. And I think that that frustration also adds to deviancy. So I'd just like to say that I look forward to your ministry implementing a more methodical program as it pertains to the urban areas, so that we can keep these issues at bay, and you can play your part in also stamping out crime and deviancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Speaking as a St. Michael MP myself, I'm well aware of the concerns that you have expressed. And I think sometimes I too used to think that nothing was bigger than St. Michael's office, that everything needed to be done there too. The truth is that the more that I have grown in politics, I've come to realize that governance and government is also about prioritizing. And so while we have, on the one end, we've prioritized the Scotland district because of the neglect over the years, there's equally a balancing act that this administration has to do in relation to the densely populated areas of St. Michael as well. So I say that to say that it is not always an easy task to determine where do you target. But the truth of the matter is that it's almost like we're constantly putting all areas on a table and trying to decide, okay, what are the areas that we need to focus on and to prioritize. And so I do agree with you that in densely populated communities, it has to be a whole of government approach to be able to reduce issues of violence and to make communities safer. The ministry will continue to do all that it can to be able to alleviate some of the challenges that especially take place in those densely populated communities. But we have to do so balancing at all times, again, the resources that are available and also the the capacity within the ministry to be able to respond to the challenges, obviously, that we are facing. Because we cannot do every single thing, but I think we are clear in our minds that with 30 seats, there are certain priorities that have to be given to densely populated areas, as well as to areas within the Scotland district. And we've seen certainly in the latter how that area has the potential to develop once we're able to put the correct infrastructure into those particular communities. And similarly, I suspect that once we're able to do the same thing in the St. Michael areas, you will also continue to see the reduction in crime, but also a better ambience in terms of these communities than currently exists. I'm a firm believer that people behave in a way negatively, particularly when the communities in which they live, there's no hope. Members in the city are well aware of what I speak. You have to, if you are living in difficult conditions, when you come outside, at least you want to know that the road look decent, the pavilion has been fixed, you can run a boat on the pasture. And therefore, we have to work, obviously, collaboratively to be able to improve community spaces. And I think we have started the process of doing it. And I think I give you the commitment that we will continue to not only do it in your constituency, but try to do it across all others as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Michael West. Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, sir. It's really with a heavy heart that I really have to answer these questions. But the reality is that when I sit on this August chamber, I don't sit down as Minister of the Environment, Green and Blue Economy. I sit down as the MP who represents the constituency, the good constituency. Sometimes they call it the armed philosophy of Christchurch West Central. And it's that vein that I want to locate my questions this evening. And to say that if we want to lend our eyes to Program 785, and I know that earlier the question would have been put probably a little different, but I want some elucidation, please. 0515 is the sub-program, and I see here that there is a budgeted fund of $7,155,865 for the financial year 23 to 24. Before that, which is the last financial year, 22 to 23, there was just over $5 million. I have also read in your brief, Minister, and probably one of your officers, I see Jason looking at me, you could probably answer. I see 52 wells being issued to contractors to be done. I saw that 23 were finished thus far, 14 in progress, 12 not started, and 1 abandoned. In my constituency, I must say, after 2 visits with the Prime Minister before Christchurch spoke, I must tell you, I don't have any plans to go back unless these wells and these drains are done. I have 15 wells in the constituency, spanning Vauxhall, Tino Terrace, Warners, Graham Hall, Caneville, Silver Hill, which are prone to perennial flooding. I must tell you, it is an embarrassment for me to even speak about it. And I have to thank my constituency office right now who were able to canvass and get some funds by doing outreach activities to pay a private contractor to do some cleaning for us to help alleviate the concerns of residents in Warner's Terrace. It is a serious problem for me. It is the Grinch that I have had to face over the last 6 years going as MP for the area. I want to know, because you have an increase of over $1 million, what has been done so far? Because there have to be more. I want you to give me a idea of how much wells and drainage you all have, how much are causing problems, what has been done so far in terms of your mitigation efforts or rehabilitation efforts. And I want to know specifically how much money was spent in the last financial year on these wells and drains. Because you're asking for $1 million more, $1 million plus for this new financial year. So, Minister, you could probably get your Mr. Jason and the others in the drainage unit to answer and respond to those questions.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I think I should perhaps start before I ask Mr. Bowen to come in with, again, one of my bugbears in the ministry, because I too shared similar concerns as you did in relation to the issue of well cleaning when I came to the ministry, only to find that we were having significant challenges in relation to persons coming forward to clean the wells. To do the manual cleaning of wells, as you can appreciate, a lot of people are not interested in so doing. And so you have to use certain technology sometimes to be able to carry out those works. We actually, when we would have announced the ceasing of the program for the ash workers, the national beautification workers, we looked at the transition programs that we could put in place for a number of these workers, primarily because we wanted to put the ministry in a position where we could almost buy back the services of a number of the persons who had been helping us to clean some of the same said wells and to beautify the country for the last few years. And so well cleaning and well maintenance is now part of the offerings to a number of those persons, almost 2,000 persons who whose work will come to an end on the 31st of March. Many of them have already started the various programs because it is with a view that the ministry cannot continue to find itself in a position where it does not have qualified persons to be able to clean the wells across the country. And so I am hopeful that by encouraging these persons who are working in the ash worker program, that we will be able to get a cadre of persons who can assist. Some of them are working as well with teams of persons who are companies who already are in existence. But this is one way of us trying to address the issue of the deficiencies of getting the wells cleaned. The other issue that I'm aware of that has also arisen is that sometimes you would award the contracts to particular contractors. They would start the wells, they might have 4 or 5 wells, they start the wells and then they don't finish. And then we have a number of incomplete wells that needed to be cleaned. So this has been a major problem for the ministry, and one which, that's the reason why we've allocated additional funds this year to be able to outsource, but also to look at ramping up once we have the persons properly trained to be able to ramp up in this financial year the amount of well cleaning that obviously has to be done across the country as well. I'm going to ask Mr. Bowen just to weigh in, because perhaps he can give some greater detail in terms of some of the challenges that we've been facing also.
Honourable members, with respect to in terms of the amount of wells, and the last contract would have ended at the end of March last year, and we have now recently got approved and actually started a new contract for wells. At present, during that tender, we had approximately 30 odd persons who would have applied to the tender, and from that, we so far we had 28 who were offered contracts. So we have in place persons now that who have started some work. At present, we have a list of over 191 stormwater wells. This is across the entire country. These wells which we have prioritized and identified as wells to be done. So from Christchurch to St. Lucie, we have these wells, but that is not going to stop us from continuing to check other wells, and we will bring them on stream and reprioritize the list as we go on. But we have faced numerous challenges with respect to the well cleaning over the years. What we found that the contractors because they're small contractors, they don't always have the resources at hand, and sometimes their practices, they send the request for payments later than some should, and sometimes it is problematic. They do run into challenges relative to continuing work, so sometimes the works are extended longer than they should. But this year, as I said, this is going to be more work. We're going to do far more work this year than we did last year because, as I said, the contract ended in March last year, so no more new contracts were issued since that period. However, we have started issuing contracts for this year, and we will ramp up, especially before the rainy season, to get going.
Probably, I don't know if the PS can give me a sense of how the $5,934,734 was spent over the last financial year to assist, because you only did 52 wells. And I see under the maintenance of drainage, prevention of flooding, it's not only wells, it's flood mitigation, stormwater, well cleaning, flushing, clearing of water course flood, again, retention ponds, check dams, a whole list of things. Can you give us a sense of how the money was spent? Because you're asking for more money in the new financial year, and I would like to have a sense of appreciation of what was done, because flooding is not only an existing problem in Christchurch West Central, but based on what I'm hearing from my colleagues, it's all over Barbados. So, and not only that, you're asking now for an increase to help to mitigate against the vagaries of climate change, which is an ever-present problem that we are faced with. So on the horizon, we are saying that there's going to be increased level of discomfort. So I want to get a sense of how the money was spent last financial year, and what is the likelihood of us spending those increased funds based on what is happening in the country.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That money has been spent so far on a number of retention and detention ponds, and that has a twofold use. One, it mitigates against the flooding. Also, it assists in aquifer recharge. One of the areas that we did some work is leading into that catchment in Warners that you made reference to. There was a design done, and some of the work has started upstream. As you know the area better than me, Honourable Member, but coming from St. David's and those areas, that water makes its way, sorry, not St. David's, that would be Upper Vauxhall. That water makes its way down through Warners, and then it finds its way down to Graham Hall. So we have spent money in that area. We have also increased the work done by Jetta Services in terms of cleaning culverts. I'm sure we would all agree and can appreciate that last year was one of our higher rainfall years, certainly within the last 5 to 8 years, and the incidence of flooding was significantly reduced, and that was not by chance. That was because of the work the ministry has been doing in the cleaning of the culverts, the building of the retention and the detention ponds, and now we'll focus on the well cleaning. Unfortunately, we do not have a large pool of well cleaners and well diggers in Barbados. As the Deputy Prime Minister said, we have met with the Barbados Vocational Training Board to request assistance to have persons trained in the area of well cleaning and well digging. For the 5 years that I've been at the ministry, as I was just telling the Deputy Prime Minister, I don't think I have seen 3 new well contractors. Mr. Boyne indicated that we have signed 22 for the year. I know I signed a couple more yesterday, but they're all the same persons. When you visit a site and you see the well diggers, to me, they all look over 40, but a lot of them look as if they're in their 60s. So we really need some younger males to become involved in the area of well cleaning and well digging, hence the reason we've approached the BVTB. We've asked some more money this year, Honourable Member, because we intend to be proactive. I would have made reference to the chair in response to a question that he asked earlier, but there are 24 water courses that we are preparing to clear in across seven parishes. Also, another challenge that we are having, and I've asked the Drainage Division to engage some of the landowners. What I've noticed is that a lot of the land cultivation, seems that persons are moving away from furrowing along the alignment of the contours. I've been told that it is more expensive. I don't know how true it is. But let's take, for example, an area that impacts me and also impacts the Honourable Member for Christchurch East, that area at the bottom of Wilcox Hill. We're now getting ready to send that out to tender designs. I have to drive through it every day, sir. Yeah, we're getting ready to send that out for tender designs, but the problem there is that the farmers, they furrow the land from east to west as opposed to north to south. So therefore, all the water runs off into the road, but it's not only the water, it's the silt. So we would have spent thousands of dollars in cleaning that well, pumping that well. And what we have done, we have sent it out to have an engineering design P.S. in order. You have exceeded your limit. I'm sorry, Chair. You can just wrap up 10 seconds. Oh, thank to you. wrap it up. Thank you. So that money is going to be spent, sir. We are also having engineering drawings done so that we can make sure that we deal with flood attenuation and flood alleviation. Thanks.
And lastly, thank you, PS. And lastly, but I'm glad that the Deputy Prime Minister made the clarion call for contractors. I didn't know her office would be flooded by tomorrow with those persons who will be willing to lend assistance to this cause, this noble cause. But lastly, I want to know if, because we are talking science, we are talking new technologies, we are talking experts here. Does your ministry, anyway, are you looking to invest in having flood control engineers and those persons who could assist? Because we have now moved from the stage of just seeing wells and cleaning them and ensuring that drainages are clean. I think that we have to now ensure that we have those experts and engineers on board who can advise so that we will not be faced with these challenges over and over all the time. I think it has now moved itself to a scientific realm. And that is the area I think that we should start looking for those types of consultants and things, because that is the only way I believe that we can make a difference as it relates to the challenges that we have. That's just my small, humble suggestion. Thanks.
Yeah, just a quick response to you. I totally agree, Minister. I can't say that within these estimates for this financial year, we have considered experts in that particular area. As I said before, we are trying to play catch up on the things that have not been done, in particular deal with the flood mitigation measures. But the truth of the matter is that the ministry has also been working very closely with international partners to be able to see where we can get technical assistance, not just for the main ministry, but also for instance, the Barbados Water Authority. And I think that as we while we recognize the work that Prime Minister has been doing, leading the charge with respect to climate change across the world, there are obviously opportunities for us to partner with other countries who have walked this road before. And therefore, I think that a large part of what we must now do is definitely try to tap into those resources. If they're not available here, then to try to see how we can outsource. Also within even from an education perspective, being able to encourage persons to pursue areas of study within the areas that would impact directly on the ministry as well. So not a direct inclusion within these estimates, but certainly a lot of food for thought in terms of the direction we have to go. And it's not just in drainage that we need the technical competence. We're seeing it across all of the ministry because it cannot be business as usual in MTWW as it relates to climate change. So we will have to weigh in on persons who have a bit more experience in this area going forward.
And just to add, remember, you mentioned flooding. Of course, we must make the point that in many cases, some of the flooding that occurs are not necessarily, most cases, is not the fault of the residents in the area, but some areas over the years would have built in flood zones. We would have seen that where some areas are natural water courses, and that has resulted in many cases of some of the flooding that we see now. But one of the things that you mentioned, when you mentioned about experts, one of the things that we're looking at in the ministry, certainly as we build out our road and main infrastructure, is perhaps ways of disposing of water from roads, not only that it floods or that it flows into the sea, but also that we can also have some of that water go directly to ground and recharge our aquifers. So we're looking very carefully going forward, not only at ways of mitigating flooding, but in some cases, ways of capturing that water. Yes, capturing that water or disposing of that water in such a way that that water is of utmost benefit to us going forward. But thank you for raising your question and your suggestion, because in terms of building up capacity, depending on higher dependence going forward on consultants to help us navigate the as you put it, the vagaries of climate change is something that we may have to look at more seriously in this ministry. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central. Let me remind all members and those of you members of the team responding to any questions, please speak into the mic. You're addressing the chair, and it'll be much better if you look in this direction and you are thus able to speak into the mic, that we can hear you and that those recording can hear you. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank you for the opportunity, because I am going to thank God first for the privilege for us, all of us, to be here, and of course to indicate my gratitude to this government for the help thus far. Despite the challenges, it is better than it was for 14 or 15 years ago. I want to take this opportunity to, sir, through you, to congratulate the Honourable Minister. I believe she's the first person as a female to manage a ministry of this magnitude, and I think she has taken off well. And of course, her team, lending her support, will help her to be able to achieve some of the goals. I also want to thank the government for the concept of the cleaning from the Arch project that has been going on with our young men, and I pray that the training and the other opportunities that they get will help them to be able to be attracted to other forms of employment to save some dangers. I also want, sir, to indicate that I always talk about St. Thomas as being the heart of Barbados. And you know that if your heart isn't good, you are not good either. Your chances of survival are limited. And so I would wish to seek some help from the Ministry of Public Works and Transport in order for us to be able to get our projects done. Now, the first one, sir, is the widening of the road right by the Welshma Halls or St. Thomas Post Office, leading into Lion Castle, that will take you on to Fortress Hill and the other areas in the northwestern side of the parish. I can thank the Permanent Secretary, who last year made another valiant effort to have it done. but it never materialized because I was told that it would need engineers to be able to have it corrected. And my first question was, did not engineers build it the way it is? Unfortunately, to enter through, to go to Lion Castle and those other communities, they are far-flung. It is extremely dangerous. The rocks need the rocks need cutting, and at night, more dangerous than you can ever imagine, sir. And I know of a man who lost his life there. To this day, nobody has been able to find out who murdered him. And then when it rains, it makes it even difficult. And so the question is, what plans will the government assist me with in relation to widening that road? Whenever a big vehicle, or sometimes even two cars, one is coming out of the Lion Castle bosom, while the other is going down from the main road at Lechma Hall, if two of them are coming, one has to wait at the bottom of the hill by the highland in order to come up. It is extremely dangerous. As a matter of fact, that was a bus route. And now that the sugar canes are being cut, the road is even more popular. And so, and it's an excellent link road. And I would like to find out, sir, from this, these members here, what efforts are being done to have that road dealt with. I have pledged to I'm calling the permanent secretary, I remember what he is for me, early last year, that I will give, if they need 200 16-inch blocks, take out 6 feet. There's no path for them to get out of. The buses are not going there anymore. They're senior citizens, pregnant women, young children, persons with challenges, and nothing has happened yet. And I would really like for that matter to be dealt with expediency. I don't think it's a very expensive project at all. And if the government would have allowed me, I would have had a truck, a bobcat in there ripping it down, because I see the danger. I can just feel it. Sir, would you then allow the Honourable Minister and her team to give me some kind of response to that, because it's causing quite some fallout in the parish.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for raising this issue. I do recall, and Parlsec, visiting with you and the technical team to view the area. I also recall that I think on the left-hand side of the road going down the hill, there was some discussion regarding the possible acquisition of land, if that might have been needed in order to do the widening. But I know the team was reviewing it. I'm going to ask Mr. Tudor to just update you and the House on the progress that has been made so far.
Yes, good afternoon again. Honourable Member, you'll be pleased to note that that work will be started next week. The excavator that was going to be used at that was at Day Tree Hill, doing some work down there. Now that work at Day Tree Hill has reached a stage where we can move the excavator. So I met with my officer, union officer for the Northeast District, and we decided that on Monday next week, or maybe earlier, we will start that work going down Stony Gully. We're going to widen it, and we're also going to put up block work, 12-inch block work coming up there on a footpath. So I know you'll be pleased to hear that.
Thank you very much, sir. I so appreciate it. If you were living in the constituency and you were the MP, you would understand the level of abuse, verbal abuse I get over that road. And we have never suffered like that ever before, except during the period when we were in opposition. So I want to thank you very much. The second question, Mr. Chairman, sir, is associated with the link roads. Many Barbadians may not be familiar, but link roads serve a very important purpose. And of course, Jack in the Box is one of the most popular roads now, and I would like to publicly express my gratitude to persons like the former superintendent of the works there at Bagatelle, Mr. Cleo Marshall, and of course, the gentleman from St. Philip, whose name escapes me now because I was waiting for so long to talk, Anthony Brathwaite and his teams, the local teams, for the excellent work that they would have done during the period of us in opposition. And I have a tremendous difficulty when a government says we are not doing anything for a parish or a constituency. We are all one people. And that is how we in the north of Barbados had suffered during that period when there was only the seat in St. Lucie that was under the then administration, and all other 7 constituencies in the north, St. Andrew and all of us. And that's how we have gone to be in this way for that 10-year hiatus. where we could not get anything done at all. And if the taxpayers are paying money, then it should be spread across the board. And I will not support this government if it ignores any constituency, because it is not one that is in the party of their choice. It is myopic as a people to be able to be thinking like that when most of us have had free education. So I want to make a query, because every morning now, there are no less than 200 cars that enter through Jack in the Box. But because Hangman's Hill, I counted 133 potholes about a month ago, but there has been some scraping. The depot has started to work on it. Persons were not using it, so they're now coming through Ashford Hill onto the same lane, Castle Road, in order to get to St. James and the west and the north of the country, and vice versa to get to the east of the country. Persons are using those roads because none of the other roads in St. Thomas is good. So I would wish to find out when we can get some work done in those areas, because it is extremely difficult. Persons are crying out for the damage to vehicles, the inordinate period of time they have to wait, and so on. And I would really like for that link road. I recognize that Hangman's Hill is in the budget this time. I pray that it will come to fruition, because I have looked at my notes from 2018 July, and there was an amount in the budget for the CAF Road, the CAF Phase 2 Road, Shop Hill Roundabout to Rock Hall, St. Thomas, $2.577 million, and nothing has happened as yet. And for the faithfulness of the people of the constituency of St. Thomas, all these many decades, I really don't think that we should be suffering, especially those roads are roads that take us to the various tourist attractions across the parish. There are about 8 to 10 of them. And so I would like to find out what's happening with the other roads that link on to the same Hangman's Hill and other roads. All of them in the interior of the parish are suffering for upgrades of one kind or another. I don't want to be asking to think that it is the only parish, but the neglect for so many years is really out of order, and the residents are unhappy, and I'm sure that the results we get here will speak well for us when we have our St. Thomas Speak, sir. Just want to get some answers as to where we are with those words.
Thanks, Honourable Member. I'm going to ask Mr. Tudor to just address you on the roads that are in this financial year to be done in St. Thomas. Obviously, the link road that you've mentioned, I think he can update on that, as well as some of the other roads that are under CAF. I'm mindful that King Garden to Bridgefield has been identified for the mill and pave, and we're also looking at Canewood to Prout, but I would just like him to speak to the one specifically in the Scotland district as well.
Yes, again, Honourable Member, I know that it's been a while now since we have done any major work in your constituency, but that is about to change. Let me just give you a list of the works that we plan for St. Thomas. We're going to construct the road at Lithcott-Land, construct the road at Elliott-Belgrave Road. On the CAF, we're doing road rehabilitation from King Garden to Bridgefield. Hopefully that will start before the end of March, hopefully. We're also going to do Canewood to Prout. On the Complant, we're going to be doing rehabilitation of Bloomsbury, Hangman Hill, Carrington Village, Jukes, and Jack in the Box. Right? I see you smiling. Yeah, so like I said, I know that you've been, we've been neglecting you in terms of road construction. So that is the plan going forward in the this coming financial year.
Chair, thank you, sir, for your good wishes. I live next to Broad Road. I don't really want the neighbors to hold me up and string me onto a pole, because they feel that I always used to get things done and suddenly nothing is happening. I'm a waste of time. And I want to thank you all for the efforts that you've been making. I can see some things happen. And my final one in this segment, sir, it pains my heart, because to be undergoing so many criticisms and then cannot get a single Sturgis bus to transport, and I'm talking transport board bus, to take my seniors, my disabled, my young, my pregnant women, whatever this condition is, to and from Bridgetown after being established since 2003. And all during the opposition, that bus continued to run. And then in 2018, the bus runs no more. My residents have to rely And sometimes they would love to take a minibus too. But the ZR confusion is the problem, where they are now plying the route illegally, most of them coming from Jackson. The behavior is unacceptable in that rural community or anywhere else in Barbados. Their attire, the smoking, everything else that you can think about. And then the residents of Lion Castle, Bryans Road and Highland, and the intricacies that the route had before, now they are all gone. And persons have to walk for a mile and a half through lonesome gullies and so, because the bus is no longer available. I have made every effort. I have written, I have called, I have pleaded. The only thing I did not do is cry, because I'm not a crier, nor am I a cursor. And I would really like, sir, to find out what is happening with the Transport Board Sturgis bus. So many new electric buses, and I'm feeling so happy. Even St. Andrew, where the road is just as bad or worse, is getting. And I cannot get a bus to run through St. Thomas to save people's lives, when I know in particular that when you go by that roundabout to go down to Lancaster and Endeavour, Highland and so, a dear friend lost his life there. And nobody has been able to find out who murdered him. So you know the fear of the devil in people when they have to get off a transport board bus that goes straight to St. Andrew at 11 o'clock in the night and walk to get to their homes. So I would like to know when, sir, such can be reinstated, so that at least I can say it does not have to be a thing bus, an air-conditioned bus. I want a bus that is roadworthy to run the route, even if it is one bus for the entire day, but you just change the drivers. That will help a lot, because those people are suffering, and St. Thomas people don't really complain. I'm the biggest complainer when I'm acting on their behalf. So I would like, sir, to get some kind of word as to what the Transport Board is doing in relation. The TAP people might come in between. That is not so regularly done, but I do not want to see the ZRs that are playing the Jackson route. If any of those buses comes down Highland, down Ashford Hill, and it does not belong to the route, some of them are not roadworthy, you can tell it, then my people die, then other people get injured. We don't want that. So please, Mr. Transport Board, gentlemen, sir, and others there, give me a hand with it. I don't beg men nor women, but this is one time I beg on behalf of the constituents of St. Thomas and the adjoining communities. Thank you, sir, for your patience.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for your question. As a neighbouring MP, I certainly can empathize. I share your pain and your frustration as it relates to both roads and the bus service. We've had our challenges with both, primarily because of the peculiar circumstances that have impacted that part of the Scotland district. Even as it relates to the Transport Board, we have also had our challenges right next door in St. Andrew. Just this morning, I received a call from a very vocal member of the constituency complaining about the service of the bus. So I know exactly what you go through on a daily basis, and this is something that, even though it has improved incredibly, I still from time to time have to engage residents within my community and some from within yours about the issues that we have with the Transport Board. And in some cases, some of these challenges cannot be helped because of the problems that we're having with resources. But I would invite the Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Linda Holder, to respond to your query and speak to what can possibly be done to remedy the situation for your people in Sturgis and St. Thomas.
Good afternoon to the chair. My name is Linda Holder. I am the Chief Operations Officer of the Transport Board. I took note of the comments raised by the Honourable Member from St. Thomas, and we have looked at the type of vehicle that we're sending into Sturgis. She has expressed concerns about the size of the vehicle and indicated why those were an issue. We've attempted to send a bigger vehicle in there. We will continue to monitor that vehicle. Unfortunately, the area that goes through Lions Castle, we had a major accident there back in 2018, and we pulled that size vehicle from that area. But she did reach out to us, and we are going to put in the size in between, which is about the size of a minibus, which should be able to alleviate some of the challenges that she has raised here today. Thank you.
I would also like to add something to that. And I want to begin by saying thank you, Honourable Member, for your many calls that you placed to me, and not only to speak about St. Thomas, but to tell me about anything you see amiss with a transport board bus. And I want to thank you for your assistance in helping us to maintain the level of service that we need to give to the public of Barbados. But I'm glad to see you smiling, because I thought I would not be able to get the same reaction that my colleague, Mr. Tudor, got. And, but more importantly, when in 2019, when we first had this conversation, the board would have placed a Hino, which is what we call a minibus, into Sturgis on a regular basis. And then we had the issues, and I know the chair, I know how the chair responds when I say these kind of things, but we had the issue in St. Andrew where we had to put in the shuttle services with those same Hinos. And anybody familiar with White Hill knows that the kind of maintenance and wear and tear that accelerates repairs on our Hinos as a result of that White Hill Fruitful Hill shuttle has caused us some significant downtime with our Hinos. We are now in the process, though, as the CEO is saying, and I just wanted to elaborate this point to add to what she was saying. We are now in the process, though, of improving on the quantity of Enos that we have. We are doing full refurbishments of them. We also had sent ZRs into that area, and I know that the ZRs, in terms of the TAP buses, that did not work out too well because your senior citizens complained about the steps and the discomfort with that. So that is another issue. So what we do, we try to, on weekends where we don't have the caller rate to contend with in terms of the Hino distribution, we try to put in, if you will observe, we try to put in some of those Hinos into Sturgis at the weekend. So yes, it's an issue that we are looking at. We know that the persons in Lancaster, etc., they take the Shuri bus, but I would like to publicly say to them, just bear with us a little more. My apologies for making you have to take such a walk, but we are working on it, and I would expect within maybe the next 8 to 12 weeks or so, you will see some relief coming into Sturgis. I wanted to be specific, particularly because I know this is an issue that we have spoken about on several occasions, also in this well and outside of this well. But I want you to know that yes, we are looking at it, we do have a plan, and we should be settled within the next 8 to 12 weeks in terms of the Hino restorations that we're doing, because we are dedicating 2 to Sturgis. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thanks very much. Advice from a neophyte. Even to control the microphone. Thanks very much. This problem for me has taken me on a journey that goes back to the 1990s. And you have to understand how much I had to endure. Trend and hearing minister after minister, party after party, giving me the assurance from then until now that this matter will be addressed soon. The word soon has so much elasticity that it looks as though y'all are waiting until I decease. And probably all those people who now exist in St. Michael's East deceased for some person unborn to come along and address these problems. The problems that exist in what you call then Zone 1, that I'm now hearing you say is Zone A. That is the kind of work that has been going on for a long time. It is no longer Zone 1, parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East. It is now Zone A, and I don't know what help that is to me. I don't care if it's Zone A, Z, or G. I want the problem resolved. My people cannot enjoy the benefits of having access to water, bam. We have no proper drainage system. We can't discuss anything to do with asphalt or anything like that, because people travel on raw mud, on paved roads, with large rocks protruding, chopping off the toes of people, giving people all kinds of problems with their feet. I don't know how a political party that is progressive could be fully aware of these things happening. I don't understand this is an urgency. I personally, I believe this is the last year that I retreat in ministers, party, bureaucrats, kind. These are people who send me to Parliament for the time that I've been in here. And I really need to hear something a little more decisive or precise about when I'm going to see some action. Prior to the election, we put up billboards. I put up billboards. I believe that if I did not put up billboards, at least in try to give a rebirth to hope, I believe that all I know, you would be laughing at me. But I thought, at least on the last occasion, when you see I put up the billboards, I had the assurance that action will be taken immediately after. And the problem moved from MTW to MPC. And then it moves from MPC to the private enterprise about lights. And then it moved to some other ministry. So I have a very complex problem where I am asking now for what is the Ministry of Transport and Waterworks doing to make me and the people of St. Michael's feel comfortable in Lakeridge Village, Odessa McLean, and Belguddy, that they can feel confident that this year, that we will see a genuine effort to try to address the issues inside the constituency. That's the first thing I want. I don't want to boy tell me, we will work on it soon. By now you need to be able to tell me that before we get to All Year's Night, this ministry will be doing some work. I need to have something concrete. So if I can judge you by this one, and when that day comes, well then I will take any form of action that the people in my constituency consider is necessary. So I need to hear from Minister, from you, and all the officers within your ministry when I can be given some kind of assurance that something will be done this time.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I know that you know that there has been some work done thus far. I know this because you have been invited to the meetings. I know you would not have been here earlier when I mentioned it, but I did highlight the fact that member for the city, the Honourable Speaker, and yourself would have been invited to meetings along with your teams, as Dr. John Mwanza from BWA would have presented on the stage at which the works were. They would have been brought to the Barbados Water Authority. A presentation was made. We wanted to go into the communities to conduct an audit initially to be able to see where we were, because I think you also are well aware that every time that attempts have been made to go in to correct this problem, the officers often come back and tell you that within a matter of weeks or days, new construction takes place in a number of these communities. And so in order to progress this project, we had to go back into the community. We had to indicate to persons that there were consultants who had been engaged to be able to do the social surveys and also to start to do the design work. And that is a process that I think it is fair to say has not in all of certainly my lifetime ever been done. We are now at the point where we have the consultant teams engaged to be able to start that progress. And it is our hope, we are a little behind schedule because we had some challenges, obviously, because of COVID and stuff in terms of getting people onto the ground. But we are pretty much on track to be able to get back into the households, to speak with persons, to be able to look at the different options that are available in terms of sewering in that area. I think we have about 125 households that have been identified. The board has also had a paper done, which I am due to carry to cabinet, looking at the various options in terms of solutions for sewering. And once those proposals have been considered, obviously we will then be in a position to look at the financing. But this has been given a priority from the Prime Minister, it has been given a priority by the cabinet. We are all well aware that you have been in the trenches arguing for this for a long, long time. And despite the feeling of some in society that we ought not to look after persons who have been squatting in these communities, it is our humble view that there is no person who has to catch water by a standpipe with their children, or for children to bathe by a standpipe in a community, or as I have seen when I have walked with you, where you have persons catching water in water bottles to be able to bathe, that if these persons had a choice or an option in terms of where they live, that they would want to continue to live in those conditions. And so it is our view, as we have done as a government in other areas, that the sewering of the Bellevue, Bailey's Alley, and Chapman Lane areas are areas that will be given highest priority by this administration. You are on my border, honorable member, and therefore I feel a deep connection to your concerns in relation to this matter. And my team can tell you, I'll ask Dr. Mwanza to speak, but they can tell you that I have been very passionate about trying to make sure that this project is seen to reality. That we do not renege on the promises that we have made to correct this problem. Like you, I am not happy if we put up a billboard and 2 years later, 3 years later, nothing happens. And therefore, that is why I have, with the assistance of the Paralset, we have shepherded this process. Every 2 weeks with Senior Minister, we meet with the team from BWA, and we get our updates in terms of how we are going to ensure that we are able to sewer these areas and to be able to find the financing to do so. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to ask Dr. Mwanza, just for your benefit as well, to be able to just go over the various stages where we are. Initially, I think the time frame that we were looking at was November 2024 to have completed the construction activities. He can speak certainly to whether, given the options that have been put on the table for, I think it is aerated septic tanks, whether or not we are in a position to be able to still meet that target, or whether that target will be extended. But just to assure you that after the design activities are completed, there obviously has to be a bidding process, because we then have to identify somebody to carry out the works. And then, of course, the construction activities have to then take place. So that also takes some time. And then, of course, we will be able to move to being able to bring relief to the people of the Bell area. So I just hand over to Dr. Mwanza so he can just further brief you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. As I explained earlier, we have engaged the services of consultants who would have started work last year, but had to be put on hold while we made arrangements to do the sensitization of the residents as well as do some surveys in the area. The consultants have done the preliminary layout of the sewer network as well as the potable water network, because those areas have both issues, sanitary as well as provision of water. You cannot sewer if you don't provide water. So we have put in both of those designs. Additionally, one of the areas that was identified was that they also needed to have a conceptual understanding and design for how the road network could be upgraded. So the information that we have now is information that at the next meeting of the subcommittee of cabinet will be shared with the subcommittee for review and approval, and then it will also be shared with the steering committee for the project of which you are a member, so that we could then be in a position to advise the cabinet on how to move forward. The consultants have tried as hard as possible to ensure that they can weave between the houses and minimize any form of relocation that could be required. If once we approve that conceptual layout of the sewer network as well as the potable water network, the consultants then would physically have to have the land surveyors go in and do a topographical survey. Out of that topographical survey, they will then be able to design they will do the detailed design for the networks and the potable water to ensure we are trying to minimize pumping, which will contribute to higher operating costs. So we are limiting the lift stations to only one lift station, so that we have less maintenance to do, and it will also be less costly to operate. Once we approve the conceptual design and they finish off the designs, the detailed designs, we will again have to review and approve the detailed designs. The contractor is also responsible for preparing the tender documents for construction. So once that is done, we'll put them out to tender, and hopefully we should be able to do that before the end of the year, and then construction can begin. The design team that we have on board is also contracted to provide the supervision services for the construction.
I would like, some of these contractors probably already exceeded time, get the money and gone home. And then you've got to be employing more and more contractors and consultants and things over and over again. I would really like to see the work of each individual consultant or whatever aspect that you engage them on. All I'm hearing is about what the consultants doing. You can't tell me about consultants for over 20 years. You can't tell me that you're planning, and you can't tell me about concepts. I really and genuinely believe that what you're saying to me is reasonable. There's nobody in here that has been fortunate to be elected and considered to be reasonable and intelligent men and women that will accept that kind of explanation. It is over 20 years. I want y'all to really sit down. If you really care about people, I want y'all to sit down. I've seen men grown. In fact, I've seen boys grown to become men. And as the minister said, I see these men bathing naked on each standpipes. I had to fight to get 3 standpipes in a whole area that one time had no water. And I don't have to tell you what it is for a person that has family and don't have water. I've actually had ministers getting angry with me because I've been persistent on this issue. I would like y'all to move from beyond conceptualizing and planning, and let me see some actual action happening inside the community. And I was hoping that somebody would say, well, okay, I heard that by the end of the year, and I am more than reasonable on that part of it. The other thing is, I asked before about since there's a change from zone 1 to zone A, don't you have a map, at least with some red lines conspicuously identifying the borders so that I will know those persons now who are outside of the new area, so that I can tell those persons that they should now have the right to apply to the town planning department and ask for the right to construct under the conditions that are required outside of the zone 1. People are waiting as far as Howard's Crossroad to see if, and around the external areas that you now identify as zone A, to be able to meet the conditions and the requirements of the town planning department so they can proceed with their lives in terms of developing their homes and to be able to get waterborne toilets and to be able to enjoy the things that you all enjoy, that you all now take for granted, that another man could go and do what he has to do on a small box coming from NHC. These people won't be able to enjoy certain things too. And I would like to be in procession, and I'm asking you to at least, or the minister to at least give me some area map that will allow me to be able to identify the specific areas. That is the question, sir. And I would just, the other question, Minister, and this is, you know, we enjoy borders, and you made the point that we enjoy borders. You have done some work. There's a CAF program, under the CAF program, stretching from Salters across Roberts Road. I am now being battered because the people now on Cutting Road going across to the main road that will bring you right down to the Buster statue, there seem to believe that we paid attention only to the Roberts Road area, but I've been negligent in doing anything well, I want you to alleviate the fears for me of my constituents across Cutting Road.
You have not been negligent in any way, member for St. Michael East. We have had Salters Tenantry Road done, which also is in close proximity to Roberts Road. I believe Cutting Road has also been looked at in terms of being able to address that, because that has started to deteriorate, as well as the Monroe Road area as well. Again, as I stated earlier, it is a case of juggling resources. I recall that both Roberts Road and Salters Tenantry Road back in 2008 would have been two of the roads that would have been identified by a previous Barbados Labour Party administration for works to be done. We waited 10 long years, and it was then senior minister, when he came in as minister, that was able to start the process of getting both Salters, and then later on the CAF, we were able to start Roberts Road. I give that background to indicate to you that it is not my intention to allow a number of these roads to take as long as 10 or 13 or 15 years to be done, but simply to say to you that we are playing catch up. And we're playing catch up because of, in many cases, the same Cutting Road area ended up being one of those roads that was then highly trafficked because of the deterioration of the same Salters Tenantry Road and the same Roberts Road. And therefore, Monroe Road and those surrounding areas now are, in a sense, I'm sure I don't need to have the technology to tell me, but I can see the deterioration taking place on both of those roads. And so it is something that we're going to have to address very soon. I mean, we've done the rehabilitation where we can with the pothole patching, but I'm mindful that there will come a point where we're going going to have to obviously apply our minds to that, and certainly once we have the finances to be able to do it. So just to reassure the residents of the area that it is on our agenda, because it is in the general area of those other two, but we obviously have to execute what is within the CAF program at this point in time. All right.
With regard to the zoning maps, we do have the maps that show the new boundaries, and we also have an app where you could put in your latitude and longitude coordinates or your GPS pin or your land tax number, and it will be able to tell you which zone you fall into. I think we had also gone as far as working on those maps and demarcating them by constituents, so that what was supposed to be done after that, and we still have to do it, is to make a presentation to all the parliamentary representatives so that they would then know how to utilize the app and be able to, if their constituents ask, be able to identify clearly for them where they fall, and that would expedite the process that you are asking for.
Sir, I want to ask the final question. So this map, or rather this is just in connection with the question about the map, this map has gone through the entire process. Apart from being in your department or being in the waterworks, has it gone through the entire process that has reached the highest level of approval? So that if I have this map and I go to town planning would not tell me they don't know anything about this map. Is it the map, this document that you now have in your possession, with all the technical advances that you're mentioning to me, can I carry this map now to the town planning department, and the town planning department has no basis, not for denying me, but refuting to accept this document as fully legitimate within the system itself?
Just to clarify, Honourable Member, the legislation has not been brought before, as you said, the highest offices yet. The zoning legislation is before CPC. There were some changes. It was in draft. There were some changes that had to be made because we had to include some of the desalination zones as well within the order. And so long as those come back, the intention, as Dr. Mwanza said, is to meet with the full parliamentary group so that MPs such as yourself have a better understanding of what it is that we are proposing before we actually ventilate it here in Parliament and then take it to the wider public. I will give you the assurance that the intention is also to do a fairly extensive public relations campaign because again, just like with the issue of the sewage in the Bell, are two things that the Honourable Prime Minister has been pushing for some time to be able to make reality. And I therefore give you the assurance that the public education has to be at the forefront of us being able to make this very transformational change in the way people live in this country. And so you will have that opportunity in due course to ask all of your questions of Dr. Mwanza and the rest of the team.
Thanks, Madam Minister. I don't want the public to be misled by some premature view being expressed when there is no completion or approval of the actual document itself. To me, that is a melody, but no structure. So I'm looking forward to at least seeing the document when it has been given the approval at the highest level. But if you can share it with me now, I'd be grateful. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the team of Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources. I'm not going to delay because I know we have a number of questions, members with questions, and I'm not going to spend the evening asking you, Madam Deputy Prime Minister, I'm not going to spend evening to ask you when the bridge at Bears Village will be fixed. This predates you. I'm not going to spend evening asking you when the well at Border Hall, after you pass the Border Hall police station on the right traveling east, when that well will be covered. That predates you. I'm not going to spend evening asking when the well at Eastern Hill will be closed. That predates you. A challenge between drainage, waterworks, and MTW. And it's an open well with a number of children running around. I'm not going to spend the evening asking those questions. Now, when the roads will be fixed in St. George South, because I see you started the work at Border Hall, and I congratulate the team for that effort. But I'm going to go to something that I think is bothering businessmen and women in this country, small business people. And I think I raised this with the permanent secretary. We have a massive road program in this country. We're undertaking a massive road program. Some tenantry roads, some small roads. And I'm seeing a trend where the small businessmen are being forgotten. They've been forgotten. And we raised this several times. And I would like to hear from the ministry, what are the plans to incorporate the small road builders? I have taken it upon myself as minister to carry on the work started by the former Minister of Housing. In an effort to build houses, we need to engage in infrastructural work. And we have engaged, following the rules, small contractors to build roads for us. I would like to hear from the team. What's the plan to have some small road builders, the small ones? I'm not saying to take away the work from the big ones. There's enough work to share among the large road builders and the small ones in this country, but we are not seeing the small ones being engaged. So I want to know what's the plan from the ministry to have that rectified. That's one question. I don't know if you want to take that or if you want me to go on. Oh, you take it, thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I think, first of all, you might want to define what you consider small, because some of these so-called small businessmen of which you might be referring, or persons who call themselves small, are not so small after all. And I think the bigger issue is, for the ministry certainly and for myself, is how do we ensure that the works that have to be done under the rehabilitation program of our roads is done by not just the large size contractors, of which there are at this moment 3 large ones. 2 in particular have the asphalt plants up and running. The other one, I believe, is in the process of trying to get that plant up and running. Am I correct? Yes. Yeah. So we have 2 entities that predominantly have had the bulk of the work of mill and pave in this country. We have also had a number of persons who we consider to be the medium size and the smaller contractors who, from where I sit, certainly there are opportunities within the ministry for works to be done by a number of those persons. Obviously, there has to be a process to be followed for persons to be able to apply to the ministry. And in some cases, there is a track record already of persons who have built roads, because roads is not something that you can say that you can do, but you have no proof in some cases of being able to do it. And so the ministry staff obviously will work with persons to be able to ensure that they understand the standards that we've been speaking about earlier, to make sure that they can meet the specifications of the ministry standards if they are to do work for the Ministry of Transport and Works. I therefore want to make it abundantly clear that we have had a number of persons come forward to the ministry to indicate that they would like to offer their services, particularly in the last few months, where persons have said that they would like to do some of the works, and we have obviously looked at having a number of those persons go through a process of tendering to be able to offer themselves to the ministry to carry out those works. So I'm not sure who are these small people that you speak about. but there is a process for persons if they wish to apply to the ministry to be able to carry out the work. And in this financial year, it is certainly my intention to ensure that the work is not concentrated primarily in the hands of any 3 contractors, but that both the medium-sized and the smaller contractors can get the work done as well. The truth is that many of those small and medium-sized contractors still have to go back to the large contractors in order to be able to get the materials to be able to do the roads. And that, if you ask them, that has also been a challenge for some of them in terms of being able to purchase that material at a cost that makes doing the roads in the first place efficient and certainly effective for them. So I think people have to appreciate the fuller picture. It is not a simple case of saying we're not looking out for the poor man. I have come from humble beginnings, and I know my ministry will tell you that I am always asking about the poor man. I always asking about why the poor man ain't get paid. I did it from education, and I will continue to do it because I believe anybody who does work in this country is entitled to be paid and paid on time. I don't care who they look like and which class they have come from. But if you have done an honest day's work, you deserve to be paid and paid in a timely manner. So, Minister, if there are specific concerns you have, perhaps you should put those on the table, but I want to give you the assurance that there are no small businessmen in this ministry, certainly, that have in any way been forgotten.
DPM, I'm not going to prolong or go back to the question. Just to say what I'll do, I'll forward the names of those that are being engaged at the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance and National Housing. I will forward those to the ministry, and then, you know, they're not the conglomerates, but there are some small businessmen that can build roads in this country to help us. So I will forward that to you.
And what will help is that if you have a track record of persons who have done work for National Housing or the ministry, then that helps the ministry as well, because that's why I'm saying that anybody can say they can build something until they're actually given the opportunity to do it. And if they have a track record, it certainly helps us to be able to make those decisions. Equally, I've said to Mr. Trudeau, will tell you, I've said to him, even in the case of the individual who doesn't currently have the plant up and running, I've said, well, go in, look and see whether the plant exists. Let us go in and try to work out whether they have the technical capacity to be able to run an asphalt plant. Because they don't have to show me that they've built a road, but what they have to do is to show that they have the competency to be able to execute a project once given. And if we have doubts, then we give them a smaller bit of work to do, and then once they're able to complete that, then they can continue to build out other roads. But what we cannot do is set up these false barriers to stop people from being able to enter the marketplace, to offer services to help us with our road rehabilitation program.
Okay, my next question, this speaks to Transport Authority. I think this also predates those persons who sit in the highest office within the section of Transport Board and Transport Authority. We are saying, and I'm speaking on behalf of a constituent of mine. I'm going to use the example of a constituent of mine. And he messaged me to ask me to raise it because some persons are being unfair in this country. And I, like the member for St. Michael South Central who spoke, and like you, Deputy Prime Minister, we came to government with a mandate. We represent, both you and I, working class people. And I'm seeing a trend within the Transport Authority, persons sitting in high office, holding pretty high office in the authority, who own permits, and they're either leasing the permits or renting, you find the correct phrase, permits to persons who, for want of a better word, never had the opportunity to own a permit. And they're sitting high authority, and they're abusing the authority. In my words, they are unfairing the small man again in that sector. And I know some of these matters are known, and while it may be a question and a statement, I am asking that some level of respect for those persons who, for want of a better word, were not able to own a permit. Permits, I heard us mention some 100 permits that were given out. I'm talking about the ZR permits. And these persons within the authorities, I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to create any problems when I leave this chamber, but just to ask, what are we doing to ensure that a level of transparency, respect for the process, and that persons who sit in authority in the private entities do not abuse the power that they have in leasing permits to small persons and then depriving them of taking home a salary on a weekly and monthly basis to provide food for their families. What are we doing within the Transport Authority? And I know some of you know what I'm speaking about. And I would allow you, DPM, to divert the question. This is not about you, Deputy Prime Minister, because I hold you in very high esteem in this office. But you may not see and know everything. And there are persons in who can answer the question. And I pause there.
I thank you, Minister. I like to deal with specifics only because when we go general, sometimes you try to sweep everybody or paint everybody with the same brush. And I therefore would just err on the side of caution in the comments that you have made. If there are specifics relating to instances of which you speak, then perhaps we ought to have a conversation regarding that. But I'm happy to allow the Director of the Transport Authority to address the question that has been raised. To the best of my knowledge, I don't have any information that would suggest that what you have just stated, that there has been any cases brought to certainly my attention. I don't know if the Director has had anything drawn to her attention, but I do feel that so far, under certainly my tenure, there has been a level of transparency. I think before you came in, I would have highlighted the fact that under a previous administration, prior to an election, a number of permits were given out in short order. I don't know if that is the period of which you speak and if those are the persons who hold those permits and have been giving them out. But I can certainly say that there has been a very tight ship since we have come to office in relation to this matter. And I would therefore ask the Director of the Transport Authority, Ms. Ruth Holder, to perhaps address your question.
Good afternoon, Chair, through you. Minister, thanks for your comments, your questions. Transport Authority Act was proclaimed in 2008. With that act, we never got regulations. What has happened is, over the years, the Transport Authority was given a certain degree of autonomy, and the greater degree remained with the Barbados Licensing Authority. So what we have, therefore, is a situation where Transport Authority issues a permit approval letter. Permits are issued by Barbados Licensing Authority. Serious loophole there. The lacuna exists. So what happens is that people are aware of the situation, was able to reinvent the wheel, to put it in a diplomatic context, reinvent the wheel and do what might not have been the fairest thing to do. Earlier we spoke about the number of permits which were issued prior to election. I joined Transport Authority approximately 2.5 years ago, coming towards the end of my contract now. And what we noticed after checking the records of the Barbados Licensing Authority with the Barbados Revenue Authority, we realized that in some instances, permits were slipping through the cracks. When I say slipping through the cracks, permits were being issued where letters were not. Permits were being issued without approval letters from the Transport Authority. We tried to put a stop to that, and I believe that we probably have wrestled it to the ground. It was not an easy task because, as I mentioned, we have 3 entities involved, and therefore, the possibility exists that anything can happen in between there. We try to tidy up the systems that we have in-house. We actually tidied up the systems we have in-house, where permit letters are only issued by one officer, approved by the director as well as the chairman, to ensure that we have a tighter control of the process. I know the situation that you mentioned, and in relation to permits being issued and being leased and being rented out, that is a situation which the Transport Authority has absolutely no control over. When we do find out what is happening, we actually inform licensing authority by way of letter, email, or whatever means we need to inform them of. We do inform them of what is happening, but in terms of permits being leased, we have absolutely no control over. In some instances, and I want to make the record straight, in some instances, those are private arrangements between two individuals. And Transport Authority cannot get involved if, for example, John Brown indicates he's going to lease his permit to Peter Smith because Peter Smith has the vehicle and John Brown has the permit. That's the issue that Transport Authority can't get involved in. When we do find out, as I mentioned, when we do find out, we inform licensing authority who has the authority via the road traffic regulations to take the necessary course of action. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, and I hope action will be taken because you know to what I'm speaking of.
Just to say that the Transport Authority regulations will address a lot of the imbalances that have existed. And just to your other point that you have to be specific because the period to which you are referring was a period before you and me. And therefore,
This predates you.
Sorry?
It predates you.
Precisely, and I would not want that the public hearing the conversation taking place in this debate is in any way left to believe that this happened under this administration. In other words, we are cleaning up what was allowed to transpire, and we're also further cleaning it up in relation to the Transport Authority regulations, which I would have indicated earlier. I think the acting AG a few weeks ago would have signed off on, and we would be in a position not only to bring some kind of clarity to this issue in terms of who can issue these permits, but also as it relates to the PSV sector as well. And just to reiterate, we have just been cleaning up and cleaning up and cleaning up a number of these things that have been creating problems for Barbadians over and over. So I just want to make that point, Minister. But I thank you for your comment and the concern that you've raised.
And I think I said that this predates you and it predates the former minister. And I am happy that the head of the Transport Authority, she knows to what I'm speaking of. And I thank you. Without bringing everything into the public domain, but we have to clean up, and I thank you, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and your team, and this government, of course. And I recognize when we came to office, we found several infelicities and a number of challenges within that sector. But my final question, though, is one that speaks to strategy, and we know when this economy begins to grow at single-digit numbers, it has started to show signs. And we are seeing a number of persons being able to purchase vehicles. Up to today, someone went to look at an electric vehicle, a Jaguar, and of course, they work for less than I do. I can't buy a Jaguar, an electric Jaguar. I can't think about it. But my point relates to the whole aspect of traffic management, traffic congestion, some of the challenges that we're having in the country in some areas, the Warrens area, the Wildy area. And I know this government, prior to 2008, we looked at a project to build flyovers, and I know the administration came in 2008 and they made a lot of mock sport of the plans that we had back then. And we have reached a stage in this country that we have to do something and do something soon. And I know you have a plan, Deputy Prime Minister. I just want for the public, for you to explain to the public and give them the assurance that this government certainly has a plan to address the traffic congestion in this country. So over to you, Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, indeed. Obviously, any good plan requires the collection of data. It isn't sufficient just for people to complain that there are issues with traffic congestion, but I think any responsible government has to also be guided by the data in terms of the volume of traffic on particular roads as well. I think there's an interesting trend that has developed over the last couple of years. You know, when I'm stuck in traffic on my way to meetings on mornings, I often remark about the number of vehicles on the road, but also I remark about the number of females that are driving vehicles and there are no persons in the passenger seats. What we have is a trend that has developed as well in terms of contributing to the congestion, where a number of vehicles are being driven with one person in the vehicle. And as I said, in many cases, there are women driving. It is something that is, I think, creating a problem, perhaps for their own safety. They have opted to, and their own decision-making, they have opted to purchase the vehicles. But I do feel that what we are seeing is additional congestion on the roads as well, because people are also not carpooling. And everybody wants to have their own vehicle in order to move to and fro across the country. So that's one observation that we have made. We have also had discussions regarding with the Ministry of Education, both when I was minister and even as I'm Minister of Transport and Works, looking at the issue of staggered times for schools. In some cases, it is working well. We have been trying, obviously, to get more dedicated services for the school system so that we can have dedicated buses being able to move children to and fro. We've not made a decision per se as to when schools are supposed to start, but what we've tried to encourage the principals and certainly the staff of the institutions is to perhaps consider staggered hours or even to encourage extracurricular activities in the afternoon so that we would have children at school a little bit longer, obviously engage in wholesome activities, but that I am sure will also help to ease some of the congestion on our roads. We've also looked at the park and ride system, which would have worked, many would be familiar with it during the World Cup period. It worked well, and those are some of the ideas that we have on the table in terms of looking at different locations where we can reinitiate the park and ride system. It works well when we're having other large events as well, and I think it is something definitely that we need to encourage. Of course, I know that the Prime Minister has asked us to look at plans for down by the Botanical Gardens, to look at an area, a large car park area there, again, where people can also park their vehicles and ride into town and traverse the country, but also have the opportunity to perhaps use the park to be able to engage in some physical activity as well. We've also looked at the Cigarfield Sobers Complex as another option as well. With all of these locations, though, that have been considered, obviously issues of lighting, use of public facilities, bathroom facilities, obviously has to be front of mind in terms of making those decisions. And of course, there has to be the conversation with the general public as it relates to why we are encouraging people to put down their cars and to use public transportation as an option. Now that comes with an equally important responsibility on the ministry as well to improve the public transportation system. Because if people do not feel comfortable putting down their vehicles because they don't know what time the bus is going to come, or they haven't seen a bus at all, and they're late for their meetings, then of course they are not going to be encouraged to put down their vehicle. And therefore, while we are looking at options that can be put on the table to alleviate the traffic congestion, we also are looking at the reforms that have to be done within Transport Board to be able to ensure that we are able to put in place the apps that allow people to be able to identify when the buses are coming, that would allow persons to be able to have better access to public transportation, hence why we are obviously increasing the number of electric vehicles over the course of the next 2 years, and that is the intention going forward. Because once you can improve the experience of persons on the roads using the public transportation, people may be more inclined to put their vehicles down. So it isn't a simple case of encouraging people to put down their vehicles, but we haven't done the public education or we haven't done the improvements to the public public transportation system. I think the two go hand in hand. I can ask the CTO to perhaps weigh in on this because I know she and her team have been doing extensive work in terms of what we will propose to the country over the coming months. And I know a number of studies have also been helping to drive the decision making in terms of where we will start first and what we will do in the coming months to help to ease some of the traffic congestion. So, CTO.
Thank you, DPM and Honourable Member. I will just add a little bit more to what the Deputy Prime Minister just said. We're looking at a full suite of options, and they will include things like active transport, so walking. In order to get people to walk more, then we have to provide these facilities for them. That includes proper sidewalks and areas where they can walk safely. We're looking, of course, at the public transport system and the possibility of PSV terminal hubs other than the main terminals that we have. We're looking at that. We're looking at even micro-mobility. In other parts of the world, they've been using scooters, and you're starting to see appearing in Barbados the bicycles with motors. Haven't quite decided what we're going to classify them as. Right, so we have to look at that because they exist and they are coming into the Barbados thing, so we are looking at that. We're looking at pedestrianization of some areas. Broad Street is one of the first areas that we are seriously looking at. And we are also in that suite of possibilities of what we can try, even something as, how would I say, as drastic, but it has been done in the past, if I remember correctly, of limited the import of private vehicles. We're looking at the full suite of everything. The reason that we have traffic congestion, obviously, no brainer here, number of vehicles that are on the road at any one particular time. So, as I said, we're leaving nothing off the table, and we are working, myself and the other technical members of the team at the ministry are working on a document that is discussing all of these possibilities with recommendations. We're hoping to have it finished. It was supposed to be finished about a month ago, but we're still working on it, primarily because we also had a recent admin mission from the IDB, and they're helping us with respect to, for instance, the park and ride and the school transport aspect of it. So we're hoping to have that wrapped up very shortly and be able to present that to the minister and then on to consideration of the cabinet. Okay.
Thank you, CTO and DPM. I just want to end, Chairman, by making a statement. I want to ask publicly and use this chamber to ask those drivers in the TAP program. We're leaving pensioners at the bus stops, and we need to stop it. I will end there. We need to stop leaving pensioners at the bus stop. Those persons who are operating ZRs in the Transport Authority, I think under the TAP program, it's not a nice thing to do. It's not the most honorable thing to do. Our citizens, it's illegal as well. Our citizens are the ones who are responsible for all of us being here. And to leave them or to take another route just because you don't want to collect a citizen just to earn an extra dollar is indeed distasteful. And I end on that note.
Just to say, in support of what you have highlighted, yes, and we encourage persons to report to the authority any of those acts which obviously affect our elderly in particular. And I know that the Director of Transport Authority has been doing her best to try to address those problems, also the issues of piracy and other areas that obviously attract the attention of the Transport Authority. So thank you, Minister, for raising that issue.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. George South. Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the members of the Well. 3 short questions, and I will be quick and succinct. The first one goes around the water situation in my constituency, St. Philip North, especially bordering the St. John area. We're experiencing low pressures, and this falls for a lot of St. Philip, but especially Blaze Hill, which borders St. John. Most days, and when I slip into work to make sure everything is okay on weekends, oftentimes the water is either low pressure or no pressure. I have asked about this in the last well, but I have not really, nothing was ever checked out to tell me what is happening. That is one with the water issue. The other with the water issue, my constituents are complaining in the areas of Long Bay, some areas of Marleyville, that the meters have run sometimes 50 or more meters from the front road to their house. So in other words, if they have leaks, and they have many requests for that, if they have leaks for reasons being grass fire or somebody maliciously burst the pipe, they come in with a water bill upwards of $1,500, being unaware of the leak because the meter is extremely far from their house. I've requested, and I'm not logistics in terms of water authority, that these meters be removed closer to their house, that at least residents can understand how it's being read and to pick up any leaks that they might have. That is respect to the water. If somebody could give me a little edification, as Bajan say on that.
Yeah, can I ask the General Manager of Barbados Water Authority, Mr. Halliday, to perhaps address the question?
Thank you, Honourable Member, and thank you, DPM. I'll address at least two of the questions raised so far. With respect to the metering and what we will call the banjo lines, Director of Engineering Charles Leslie would have indicated that those are being addressed on a case-by-case basis, and particularly as we move around dealing with particular areas, whether it is in terms of road renovations and mains lane at the same time, or on a specific case as we need to do so. The area you've mentioned, I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure if the Director of Engineering is familiar with that in respect of low pressures being absorbed in that area, but certainly, if not, we'll definitely have to look into it. With respect to the meters, again, once we deal with those banjo lines, then that meter issue will be dealt with. Typically what happens as we move into various districts, there's a bit of a redesigning that is required where we may replace several 2-inch or 1-inch rather meters with maybe a 2-inch or 3-inch line. And in doing so, we have to be cognizant of the lay of those particular pipes to make sure we're not running over lands that are not owned or leased by the BWA. And as well, we have to consider, depending on the complexity of the area or the density of the area, whether we will have terminal nodes or whether we'll be introducing hydrants and the like. So we have to approach this in a very systematic way. We don't just move meters, we don't just change lines, we have to adopt an approach and an assessment that allows us to make an appropriate decision. But if the Honourable Member can repeat the area for me again, I'll take note so that we can have an investigation done.
The areas with the meters, Long Bay, which would be closer to the Sam Lord, well, I don't know what it's called, I forget, Wyndham Hotel, closer to that area, and there was an area in Marleyville, at least one house reported, so that's Marleyville, and also on the front road of Long Bay. I have to check to see if any of those were moved, but those were the main areas.
Okay.
The low water pressures, that would be that I am aware of, Bequest, and the Blaze Hill Supers, Fortescue area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, or I could put two in one. The residents of Fortescue development have been complaining for a few years now, and I've got to the point where they don't think I represent them anymore, about a second exit/entrance into and out of Fortescue development. As you were all aware, there was an area in Supers where the road literally fell in, so it had to be diverted. Now, if that road is blocked, the residents of Fortescue and even Collar Savannah, as I discussed with the Honourable Member for St. John, they'll be virtually locked in. Yes, there are cart roads, but if the rain falls, you really can't exit the area, and that's a major concern of theirs. Before you answer that, there's also the question of the bridge area in Supers. I think your permanent secretary is well aware of it. Before the last election, we were well on the way into fixing the bridge. Several vehicles pass through there, including heavy buses and trucks, and my fear is that the bridge falls in. We had started diverting that area so that work can be done, but it came to a screeching halt. And I'm hearing about the CAF program, till I'm dreaming about the CAF program. But areas like, and I came through there with the Honourable Prime Minister, in the road in front of the district hospital where several nurses work and family members need to visit their relatives. The nurses get off at the main road, maybe by Hildeskeen, and if it is raining, there is no way in heaven, unless you have a boat, that nurses can get into work. Luckily, one of the residents that lives in the area is kind enough when the rain falls. He does the shuffling from one end of the road to the other, so that these nurses who take care of our elderly in the Barbados, I dare say not just St. Philip, they can actually access the work. So the second question I have with respect to when that road work will begin. At least those are two of the major areas. Of course, there are others, but I'm constantly hearing that St. Philip North had enough, and please don't tell me that. Thank you.
It certainly got quite a lot previously on the former minister member.
I said, don't tell me that.
I didn't tell you that. I just said it got a lot. I will ask Mr. Tudor, the Deputy Chief Technical Officer, to just respond to some of the areas specifically that you mentioned, in addition to the bridge.
Yeah, I can't speak to the second exit or entrance out of Fortescue. That's something that we will have to look at to see if it can be done. The bridge at Supers, I am not sure about that. What's the status of that right now? Again, that is something that we will have to investigate and let you know what can be done in that regard at this time. But that's something that, like I said, will have to be investigated. Was there another area?
Yes, the road in front of the district hospital by the King George V Memorial Park. I understand it's on the CAF program, but
Yes,
it's
that's
urgent.
that's on the CAF program to be done, correct.
Which is how long we're thinking?
I don't have that program here. Let's see. No, I don't have that program for this thing. But we will look at it and see if we can bring forward, bring it forward and put it in the coming financial year's program. But I don't have it listed here to be done during this coming financial year. But we will, like I said, we'll have a look at it and see, if it can be brought forward and what can be done on that road.
Okay, maybe I should look into the Ministry of Fisheries responsible for that to see if we could get a boat for the nurses at some point. My final question / comment. Previously, as I understand it, the signage, the department in the Ministry of Transport and Works, each depot, correct me if I'm wrong, but was responsible at one time for signage in the parish. I understand now that that is under one location. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's putting a little damper into the signage issues in St. Philip North. So a lot of signs have been broken down. The residents are kind enough to leave them on the side of the road waiting with bated breath for you to come and put them back up. But I'm wondering if it would be a better move, or going forward, if that could be put back into the various depots so that we can get a better servicing of street signage and road bumps and everything. Because I had requested as little as 1, maybe 2 speed bumps and several signages in the Windward area. Almost the entire St. Philip North, a lot of these signs are out. And this is now, apart from us locals that need to use them, A lot of tourists are now traversing the area, especially on the coastal side, East Point and so on, are tourist attractions. And without signage, thank God for Google Maps, I suppose, it becomes a little difficult. So I'm wondering what is the position with getting signs done, and if by any chance you could probably think of putting back these back into the depots of the various constituencies, basically for brevity, that it can be addressed a little quicker than it is being. So no, that's it for my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. I think in the opening, I would have mentioned the issue of the national signage project that we've been embarking on. We would have started just a few weeks ago. It's a program that is intended to start to look at the directional signs and then start to look at what they call the fingertip signs across the communities, because we recognize that with doing a lot of the road infrastructure, we also still need to make sure that Barbadians know where they are, and certainly the tourists know where they are going as well. And we've seen a deterioration of the signage across the country. I'm going to ask Mr. Durant, Mark Durant, who's the Chief Planning Officer, to perhaps just speak to it, since he leads the project as it relates to signage, to better address the questions for you as to how that is rolling out.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Chairman, Honourable Member, as you all would know, well, you should know that the last time the country had any upgrade in its signage infrastructure was prior to the 2007 World Cup. That was a great time in the country. We welcome everyone from around the world, and they saw the beautiful island that we had to offer. They were able to move from place to place very easily. The signage was clear, it was brand new. Since then, we've failed to do any serious rehabilitation to our signage across the island. And you have signage at 4x8. These are the big placard signs that you see. You know, you're going to Spikestown, you're going to this location, that location. They've lost their reflectivity. They're fading, they're rusted. And so the cabinet approved.
I hate to
I am so sorry.
Can you give
I'm so sorry. My name is Mark Durant. I'm the Chief Planning Officer at the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources. My apologies. So the Cabinet of Barbados had agreed. In fact, the Ministry had put forward a proposal to do a national signage program, which involved first doing the audit, seeing which signs are bad, what needed to be replaced, and the supporting infrastructure. You know, some of them are electric poles, some of them are on metal poles, the different types of supporting infrastructure. And we wanted to have a project where 440 people were employed to do the audit. Cabinet agreed to 35 persons and a $3.5 million program 2 years ago. We've started to do the audit. We've brought the auditors on. They're currently deployed in the field, and we have already about 2,000 entries from those 35 people. So they're going from coast to coast. They're going on Highway 1, Highway 7, all of the lettered and numbered highways. And so we are well on our way to getting an idea of what needs to be fixed. By the end of this financial year, which is the end of March, maybe a week or two to clean up any other details, we should have a set of information that we take to tender, and we're going to get those signs replaced. And we should be seeing, during the course of the next financial year, some of this rollout. It is only a small portion of what needs to be done in totality. We want our island to be a tourist destination, so the signage has to be of a certain standard and quality. We're trying our best to make sure that this first phase shows the country what we can do when all of the phases are completed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Durant, through the chair. Thanks a lot, Minister. That's it from me.
Yeah, Honourable Minister, I'm not sure if the fingertip signs, if the question you asked in relation to the depots, if you are clear as to what is happening. I don't know if Mr. Tudor, if you want to come in as well, just to address the question raised by the Minister.
Yes, the signs are now being done from one depot, that is Richmond Depot, and as the Honourable Minister says, we'll be having challenges, and we think that it might be necessary to go back to decentralizing these where this work is being done. In other words, let the signage start going back to Six Roads Depot, and the ones in Christchurch go back to South Point Depot, and like that, because the bulk of signs that have to be made at Richmond Depot is so much that it's overwhelming the personnel there that have to do it. So I think that we will have to relook at that situation and see if we can go back to having the signs made at the specific depots themselves. So that's something that we're actively contemplating having done, probably in new financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Philip North. Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Move that the House be suspended until 20 minutes after 5. 20 minutes after 5.
20 minutes after 5?
Yeah, 20.
Check your time, sir. Have you checked it?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Honourable Member, have you looked at the time, sir? Are you sure?
I see it very clearly, sir.
It is now 16 minutes after 5.
I said
16 after 5.
I said very clearly 20 minutes, sir.
20 minutes after 5. Or you want to suspend for 20 minutes?
Sir, the specifics we did not go into right now.
You are suspended for. You want the House to be suspended until 20 after 5, honourable member? I'm just asking. 20 minutes. Do you wish yours to be suspended for 20 minutes, sir? Or for 5:20 p.m., sir? The question is that this honourable chairman be suspended for 5 minutes. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chairman stands suspended for 5 minutes.